Om Shri Ganeshaya Namaha. Om Gam Ganapate Namaha. Guru Brahma Guru Vishnu Guru Devo Maheshwaraha. Guru Sakshat Param Brahma Tasmai Shri Guruve Namaha. Sarva Mangala Mangalle Shive Sarvartha Sadike Sharanye Trambake Devi Narayani Namostute. Om Namo Narayanaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namah Shivaya. Shri Sadgurubhyo Namaha. Shri Hanumate Namaha. Welcome to Nitya Satsang. Today is the 16th of June 2026. I want to offer prostrations, Anandakoti Namaskaram, to all the great sages and to Bhagavan, Paramatma, residing in the heart of all beings at all times. Ishvaraha Sarva Bhutanam Ruddhe Shredijunatishthati Brahmayan Sarva Bhutani Yantra Rudani Maya. With that prarthana and bhav, we're continuing to examine verse number 47 of chapter number 2. Bhagavad Gita, chapter number 2, verse 47, Karmanye Vadikaraste. This is the most famous verse. We're going into this further today to continue from yesterday. Just a quick review of the words through the Padacheda. Padacheda is a way to separate the words because they're connected together inside the verses themselves. So the words by themselves are as follows. Karmani eva adhikaraha te ma phaleshu kadachana ma karma phala hetuhu bhuhu ma te sangaha astu akarmani. These are the words. Right? So we have been continuing to examine these in many ways. To continue from yesterday, we looked at, of course, the four clauses, the four parts or four statements that established the complete doctrine of Karma Yoga. So Karma Yoga is shown in this verse, and then chapter 3 and other verses also in the Gita, they open up Karma Yoga even further. But this has the entire science and technology of Karma Yoga, right? So we talked about those 4 points yesterday, and that was responsibility, non-attachment, purity of motive, and active detachment. Those 4 points we covered yesterday. Today we want to look at inner freedom, discernment, steadiness, samatva, and humility. 5 more points that are interconnected inside this. So this verse, it is showing us the discipline of inner freedom, right? Internal freedom. Now, there's 2 kinds of discipline. There is the developed discipline. For example, if I say that I'm going to do 11 rounds of Om Namah Shivaya mantra at 7 a.m. every day for 6 months, that I get disciplined in that. That is a developed, contrived discipline. Now, J. Krishnamurti, one of the great teachers in the history of humanity, has talked about a non-contrived discipline. That is a different matter. That is sthiti. That is when we are no longer trying to use the mind to develop the mind, when we are naturally in the state of realization, then everything we do comes out of non-contrived discipline. But that's a very advanced concept, and the Karma Yoga teaching here is talking about both of these disciplines actually. So we get to that in time, steadily and carefully. But let's go slowly and move into this carefully. I just wanted to just put that out there, that there's these 2 kinds of discipline. We would need many, many, many hours to show how they are related and how they're connected to each other from the developed state to the non-developed state. But we'll leave that question alone for the time being. So the deepest purpose, one of the real purposes of this particular verse number 47, it is the cultivation of inner freedom. there are two kinds of freedom, right? There's this external freedom that we feel. I want to go here, I want to go there, I want to have plenty of money, this, that, so many things, so I can be free. Yes, that freedom is obviously there. That is the freedom to move in the external world, in the dynamics of Prakriti, the freedom to experience the multifaceted phenomena of Prakriti. For that, we need good body, good mind, good health, balance. Certainly, the opportunity has to be there. Environment has to be right. So many things are needed for that. Enough discretionary funds have to be there to take trips and to do other things that you want to enjoy. Things like that, right? That is outer freedom. Now, what is inner freedom? Antarik swatantrata. वो क्या है? Inner freedom is the condition in which consciousness, meaning our psychological consciousness, is not bound by craving, fear, egotistic appropriation, or avoidance. There's several points. These are in the notes. I've sent them to you already. That's why we have created the research for our study purposes, so we can better understand these concepts thoroughly, right? Let's go carefully. What is inner freedom? Antarik swatantrata. वो क्या है? It is a state, it is a condition in which our psychological consciousness, now be careful, when we use the word consciousness, that same word can be used for chit, C-I-T, which means the Sat Chit Ananda. That chit is our life force, that is the quality of the Atma, or that is the Atma. That is the awareness, that is the inner being, the Atma Tattva. ठीक है? इसको चित्त कहते हैं, not chitta, C-H-I-T-T-A, not that. That is part of the antakarana. So chit is consciousness. That is, sat, chit, truth, consciousness, bliss, life. That is the chaitanyam. The word would be chaitanya. A good translation of chaitanya would be non-material Trigunatit, transcending the three gunas. That is Chaitanya Tattva. So it is Tattva, but it is not material Tattva. It is the immaterial substance, immaterial being, immaterial soul. That is called Chaitanya. So that is our actual form, our actual Swarupa, Swaswarupa. Right? So we have to be careful. So when we're talking about inner freedom is the condition in which our psychological consciousness, meaning the TEMDE, thought, emotion, memory, desire, energy, or in Vedanta that is described as Man, Buddhi, Chit, Ahankar. And Shakti is inside the Ahankar. So it's the same, it's just another way to put it. Our psychological consciousness is not bound by craving. There's how many points are there? 4 points. Craving, fear, egotistic appropriation, and avoidance. We'll go through all these carefully. First of all, most human beings are bound by craving. Craving is called vasana. I want this, wanting, different experiences. So the mind is not stuck inside cravings. Very big thing. This is called inner freedom. Antarik swatantrata. Does it mean that we enjoy we experience the objects of the senses? Yes. But then somebody will say, if I don't want that, if I don't have any desire or craving, how can I even enjoy that? So there's a difference between a healthy level of desire versus hankering after the objects of the senses. There's a difference between the two. That is called raga. And so this exposition about this verse, we started this based on the understanding of raga and dvesha. Raga is wanting something, experience further. Now we live this way. Yes, we have certain level of wanting. But then if it's fulfilled, leave it alone. If it's not fulfilled, okay, whatever. But the craving is the binding inside. It prevents inner freedom. Right? So the bondage created by craving the bandhan, the bondage created by fear. So we're just understanding what is inner freedom. Inner freedom is a condition in which our psychological consciousness is not bound by craving, not bound by fear, not bound by egotistic appropriation. That means that, everything I do is based on me. Aham. If you remember, we talked about this before, that this is what Shankaracharya ji and in the Vedas also, Shri Swaminarayan Bhagwan, वो दोनों क्या कहते? Aham jivam granthi. Granthi means not. I am this jiva. I am bound by my ego. And that's who I think I am. And that's how we live that way. This is called egotistic appropriation. To appropriate everything in the dimension of the ahankar. That is not inner freedom. That is inner bondage. And then there's also avoidance and things like that. That don't want to do this, don't want to do that. Where the binding inside has to go away. So this freedom is not produced by abandoning action. Action is not to be abandoned. And this is the beauty of verse number 47. Ma te sangaha astu akarmani. Mate sangaha astu akarmani. That means you do not abandon action. This freedom is produced by transformation, by transforming the inner relation to action. What is my relationship or the internal relationship to activity? That's very interesting. Fascinating question. Fascinating question. We always think about relationship in terms of parents and children and objects of the world, people, places. Those we're related that way. Yes, true. Have anybody thought about this before? Maybe that we are related to action, meaning the internal freedom opens from inside by transforming the inner relation, the inner relationship to action. It's a big concept. How many types of action are there? 3 kinds. 3 types of action, meaning karma. Karma is of physical, mental, and verbal. Physical body action, mental activity, thoughts and feelings and all those mental activity, cognitions, and speaking, verbal, man, karma, vachan. 3 kinds of action are there. Mental, verbal, physical. So, these 3 types of action, we need to be able to transform our relationship to these actions, meaning that the action is performed in such a way where we continue to act physically, mentally, verbally, without being possessed by the result. Dhyan rakhna. See this. This is how we can realize karma yoga. The possession of the result is where the trouble begins. It's where our ego gets involved in this thing. The result is mine. So the person continues to act. Action has to be there. By keeping attention on the actions, mental, physical, verbal, without fear, without craving, without egoism, without avoidance. Right? And the possession of the result is not there. It's not the rejection of the result. It is the non-possession of the result. So when we don't hold on to the fruit, that fruit, the result, the effect, the consequences, they are, of course, experienced by us. But those consequences are, whatever they may be, have to be seen in a broad light, and they are to be utilized to continue further action for the sake of action, for the sake of the beauty of action, for the sake of service to others, for the sake of betterment of all, and that's it. There is no place for the ahankar other than the transactional, interactional ego, which is not an issue. Yes, that is beautiful. This is called inner freedom. So to understand the concept first, right? That's what we're doing here. We want to be very clear what is meant by inner freedom. Understand it very clearly. And then, through the 5 points we've talked about, mantra, stotra, mandir, guru parampara, and sat shastra. 5, right? Mantra, stotra, sat shastra, mantra, stotra, sat shastra, guru parampara, and mandirs, or places for sadhana. What does that do? These 5, when we are absorbed in them, the inner freedom opens naturally, but be careful, the absorption in these 5 is not for any ego-driven activity. If it is for ego-driven activity, one will sink back into the 3 gunas of Maya, one will sink back into illusions and get possessed by the ego. So that must not happen. It must not happen at all. If that happens, one is finished in spirituality. I hope this point is clear. There's 5 of them we want to make here. Let's see if we get to all 5. There's so many, in fact. Hundreds of points are like this. We could spend the whole year on this verse, but it's all right. It's good. We want to realize this, not simply talk about it. So how do we realize it? Make a determination. This is our angel wing concept, our other program. That in the next hour, I am a mukta. This is what we say, Jivan Mukta Sthiti, right? We've been writing that down. We were talking about the last couple of years. Jivan Mukta Sthiti. Jivan means I'm living a living being. Mukta means liberated being. वो स्थिति है हमारी. जीवन मुक्त बनना है तो कोई, there's no question of getting stuck. The binding is with these 5. Mantras, stotras, shastras, mandir, and guru parampara. So many paramparas are there. Bona fide, good, proper gurus, teachers. Actually, at the highest level, everything is guru. Guru Dattatreya, Bhagwan Dattatreya Ji taught that to us. That is the highest. But before we get to that, we start with different gurus. The Gita is also guru. Bhagavatam is also guru. Sri Krishna is also guru. Physical gurus are there right now present. They have organizations and other things. So many are there. Very good. As long as there's no rag, dvesh, aham, mamatva, dislike me, you, me versus you. This nonsense should not be there. If that thing is there, there's a problem somewhere. We don't want to talk about that. So let that out. So when we are resonating this way, our actions are such that we do not possess the result. And this is what most people do. This is mine. I work 40 hours a week somewhere and I get a paycheck. This is my paycheck. Yes, it is your paycheck, no doubt. But the possession of it, rather than saying that possessive kind of statement, this has happened by krupa, by grace. Energy is used. Energy has come back this way. Energy is not to be used now to be used again, because money is a form of energy. This changes the whole vision. So we remain free. Otherwise, one gets results bounded. And this is clear. We talked about this yesterday. Okay, so if this point is clear, so a person continues to serve, act, without demanding control over how the service is received. How is it received by others? How am I being perceived by others? What is others thinking of me? This kind of stuff goes on all the time. Yeah, it is necessary to know how others are thinking so we can make some modification in our businesses and things like that. But the demand, the internal demand to constantly define oneself in relation to others, that also changes. That also goes away. This is called inner freedom. Okay, now the second point is called discernment. So what is this? This form of freedom, to reach this freedom, it requires discernment. What is this discernment? The capacity to distinguish what is within one's responsibility from what is not. What is my responsibility today, right now, in front of me? That responsibility has to be understood and then followed up without delay, without procrastination, without diversion. This is the second point, this discernment. Discernment, discernment, to discern, to distinguish, this is my responsibility and what is not my responsibility. That is the practicality of Karma Yoga. And so without discernment, an individual, a person like all of us, either overreaches or withdraws. Two things can happen. We get too involved in activities, overreaching, or we would retract when we should be involved. It's a type of viveka, right? This is viveka shakti. What is my goal? What is my path right now? How much interaction to have with family members, with friends, with relatives, with this, with that. With everything. There is a limit to that. That is called discernment. And it has to do with responsibility, and it also has to do with level of interaction. Somebody who overreaches states, I must control everything. There's a problem. You cannot control anything. Control yourself, control your own mind, that's all. And withdrawal says, since I cannot control everything, I will not do anything. That's another problem. So there's this overreaching, wanting to control everything, and then there is this withdrawal on the other side. Since I cannot control anything, I'm not going to do anything at all. You see the problem here? It's very interesting. And discernment is not overreaching and not withdrawal. It is the way out of both of those problems. That is viveka. This is actually another way to describe viveka. So what the English word is discernment. To discern. Discernment says, I will act fully where action is mine, and I will release what exceeds my control. What is in my control, that I will do fully for seva, for bhakti. That is bhakti. That is Karma Yoga is also bhakti. Because it is being done to please Ishta Devata, Guru, to help the sansar. That is bhakti. Bhakti is, of course, mantras and stotras and all. Yes, obviously. We just did that right now from 7 o'clock till 8:30. We do it every day. That is a type of bhakti, absolutely. But Karma Yoga is also a type of bhakti. It is a type of bhakti because the individual, the personality, the individual will says, I will act, or action will be taken properly, fully. That is my purview. Act fully where action is within my sphere of activity. And to release what exceeds my control. Things that are not in my direct purview. Don't try to bring control over that. Because there is no control over it. This is the psychological and spiritual maturity taught by this verse. It is a maturation process. It is a maturation of the TEMDE, thought, emotion, memory, desire, energy. It matures. And there is, of course, adhyatmic, spiritual maturity. Then our sadhana, our bhakti towards Paramatma becomes more solid. Because Karma Yoga supplements bhakti. Bhakti Yoga supplements Karma Yoga. They are all together. And that is also Jnani. So Jnana Yoga, Karma Yoga, Bhakti Yoga, they all combine together into one point only. And that is a state of sthita prajna, steadiness, a state of enlightenment, and atma darshan, atma realization, bhagavad darshan. Yes. This is called discernment. Now, the same verse also requires steadiness. This is the third point. So there's 5 points here. Inner freedom, discernment, steadiness, samatva, and humility. What is this steadiness? Steadiness is what? Stability of the mind amid success and failure, uncertainty and change. Things are uncertain, things are changing. There can be success, there can be failure. Whatever it is, be steady, internal steadiness. So this steadiness is very interesting because a person attached to fruits, to results, becomes unstable because results fluctuate. Yes, we want good quality results. We don't want problems and difficulties. That is why we do Ved mantras every Friday. We do Sri Suktam every Friday, 15 times. Purusha Suktam and other Suktams are there. Ved ki jo mantra hai, they are to promote the harmony in the world outside, so the obstacles, problems, difficulties do not come our way. But as we said before, Ved mantras are within the 3 gunas of Maya. Remember that. They're not beyond Maya. The Ved mantras are within Maya. What is beyond Maya is Vedanta. That is why it is called Vedanta. Upanishadic Jnana. In Bhagavad Gita, Brahma Sutra. That is beyond Maya. But the Ved mantras are necessary because they create the door out of Maya. They create the proper foundation because we need good health, good body, good relationships, enough money. We need things that we need to do our sadhana, to do our spiritual practices. If we don't have that, we would not be able to do it. That is why the Veda mantras, I mean, they're obviously, they are just forms of God only. But what they do is that they will remove the deficiencies and obstacles that are in our way. Right? We've said this before. And there are many, there's thousands and thousands for different purposes. They're there. The more famous ones, we do know they're in the mandirs. They're done quite often. Right? So what does the Veda mantra do? It promotes the best quality experience. So our minds are steady. We don't have the troubles, physical health, and other kinds of problems that can be horrific. Some really bad experiences are there in the sansar. We don't want any of them. So we want the best quality ones. That is why we have to do Ved mantra. And the Shakti mantras, the Navaran Maha mantra, etc. Om Aim Brim Klim Chamundai Vicha, etc. So when we do that, we become steady. So a person, why is a person unsteady? An individual attached to the fruits of actions becomes unstable because these fruits fluctuate. Praise and blame, gain and loss, victory and defeat, success and failure, all disturb the internal mechanism of the mind. That's what they do. So verse 47, chapter 2, trains us to root, to provide the proper root, trains the seeker to root steadiness, not in outcome, but in right action. That's the difference. What is my right action right now, today? Next hour, next hour, next hour, next hour, next hour. That is called right action. So I am then rooted, grounded in steadiness, not in fluctuations and disturbances. And then later on in the same chapter and other chapters, there is this samatva, right? So this kind of steadiness, this stability, this rooting in the present moment, in the present activity, it will bring about samatva. So this is the fourth point. S-A-M-A-T-V-A, samatva. That is equanimity, evenness of mind, and balanced psychological consciousness. It all means the same thing. Yes. Because yoga is described as evenness of mind. Samatva yoga uchyate. So the yoga means to be in communion, in connection, to connect. But that is only possible when we are having samatva. It's a very beautiful point. Somebody praises, somebody blames us. Somebody does this, somebody says this. Jo bhi chalta hai. No fluctuation from inside. That is the goal. To reach that goal, first understand that is the goal. Bring the 5. Mantra, Stotra, Shastra, Guru Parampara and Mandir. Inside. So all 5 come inside. And when they come inside, that will bring samatva, because the fear goes away. Expectations of what others are thinking just goes away. Our happiness that is conditioned based on external situations, circumstances, people, etc., that goes away. Somebody praises, one is steady. Somebody blames, one is steady. Somebody criticizes, one is steady. Difficulties happen in life. They happen many times. They happen, in fact, so that we can reach this stage. You have to be tested also. God tests us, right? So to reach this sthiti, ye sthiti mein jana hai. Now what does this do? So the discipline of inner freedom also requires humility. Humility is the key, is to accrue recognition for one's participation without egotistic inflation. Yes, recognition is there. We have resumes, we have this, we have that, whatever. That's all fine. But the ego inflation doesn't happen. This requires humbleness. Nirmana moha jita sanga dosha adhyatma nitya vinivritta kamaha, chapter 15 of the Gita. When results are favorable, humility is such that we remember many causes have contributed to our success. When results are unfavorable, being humble teaches us to learn without collapsing and damaging ourselves. Humility is not weakness. It is truthfulness regarding causation. This is the key. Some people say, if you're so humble, you're just a weak person. Let the world run over you. No, that's not true. That is not true at all. Humility is not weakness. It is truthfulness regarding causation. Yes. Because there's a much bigger phenomena going on that is bringing the results to us, and that is Ishvara. Ishvara is karma phal pradata, Shikshapatri. Amazing, right? The human being acts, we act, but does not command the entire universe, the entire Prakriti that is revolving around us. Billions of galaxies are there. Trillions, in fact, they estimate some 300 trillion galaxies. It could be infinite number. There may not be any finite number. Ananta Akash Ganga hai. That's just in the material world. So everything that is happening at a level which is unimaginable. That is why we do what we can do and connect with Paramatma. And God reveals who He is, what that tattva is. It's a revelation. Gurus are there. They're enlightened, awakened beings. They are placed here by Paramatma for the purpose of evolution. To have millions of people cross into mukti. Dhyanamulam gurur murti, mantramulam gurur vakyam, pujamulam gurur padam, mokshamulam gurur kripa. Right? So these are the verses like this that allow us to appreciate and learn so much, and at the same time practically apply these 5 points, that inner freedom. I am absolutely free. I have viveka, discernment. I'm steadiness. And from that steadiness comes samatva, sambhav. Sukha dukha me sambhav, right? Samaloshtashma kanchana. Everything it's a very steady, stable, evenness, equanimity. This is called samatva, and that is yoga. And with all of that, there's humbleness. Humbleness, not weakness. Humility means that there's many, many, many different causes. Ultimately, that is all happening within Narayana. Who am I to do something? My ego should not be involved. My ego is my own agnan. And if success doesn't come, learn and grow from there without collapsing. Don't collapse into, I cannot do this, I cannot do that, I cannot do this. I feel so sad, I feel so depressed, I feel somebody's blame somebody, blame this, blame that person. Nothing comes out of it except pain. So you steady, don't collapse when success doesn't happen. When results are unfavorable, humility teaches us. Humility learns without collapsing. We grow and learn. And when results are favorable, we remember that there are many, many, many causes that have completed. It's the stability, it's the humility that comes where truthfulness regarding causation is held on to, and that humbleness is strength. That is the real internal strength that grows and develops. So all 5 of these that we've covered today, inner freedom, discernment, steadiness, samatva, and humility, they beautifully combine together, and they take us to that pinnacle of karma yoga. We can really be a karma yogi because we're living inside this world. Everybody has to be a karma yogi. How can you not be? What else is there? There's karma to be done. Doesn't matter where we are. You could be roaming in the jungle. Still you're roaming. You're acting, free feeling, thinking. It doesn't matter. Running away from the home is not the answer. Yeah, sadhanas are there. People become sadhus and sadhvis and they take diksha and this and that. And that's all okay. Those are sadhanas. Doesn't matter which sadhana, which way you want to go about it. Karma cannot be avoided. Nobody can avoid karma at all. Chapter 3, we will look at some of those verses later on. This is just amrutam, right? This just can go on. There's just points after points after points after points. That's amazing ideas are there throughout the Gita, But ideas are good. We need to present them, talk about them. More important and most significant is application. And in application, what is happening? Hamara anubhav kya hai? That is the whole ball game. And then on that basis, we can continue our discussions, our dialogues further, and we can progress further. So let's stop here for now. Om Vakratunda Mahakaya Suryakoti Samaprabha Nirvignam Kurume Deva Sarvakareshu Sarvada Shri Ganeshaya Namaha Om Shri Raja Ganapate Namaha Vijay Ganapate Namaha Uchishta Ganapate Namaha Om Trambakam Jame Sugundim Pushtivardhanam Urvarukamiva Bandhanan Mrityor Mukshimamratat Om Rim 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 Swaha. Okay.